Welcome back to the range. If you spend enough time hanging around deer camps or sitting around the wood stove at a hunting lodge, you are practically guaranteed to hear someone preaching the gospel of the 243 Winchester. And honestly, I get the appeal. This cartridge is an absolute sweetheart to shoot. The recoil is practically non-existent. You can run rounds through it all day without developing a flinch. It shoots flat, and it is mechanically accurate. It has earned this legendary status as the ultimate do-it-all problem solver. People trust it to vaporize woodchucks at 400 yards and then turn around and drop a whitetail deer in its tracks. But here's the thing. That reputation creates a trap. The 243 is almost too good for its own sake. It is so smooth and so easy to drive that it gives shooters a false sense of security. People start thinking this little 6mm pill is a magic wand that can ignore the laws of physics. And eventually, usually at the worst possible moment, reality pays you a visit. And let me tell you something. You never find the limit of a cartridge when you are punching paper on a sunny afternoon. You find that limit when the buck of a lifetime steps out. You break the trigger, and the round just fails to deliver the hydrostatic shock you needed to end the fight. That is why we need to cut through the nostalgia and look at the hard data. The 243 Winchester is a phenomenal tool, but it has hard limitations that the old-timers forget to mention, and the new shooters haven't learned yet. This is the 243 paradox, the issue nobody wants to discuss until the tag goes unfilled. So let's break this down. Number 1. The Bloodline. To understand where we are, we have to look at the history books. For the first 50 years of the 20th century, the American shooter wanted absolutely nothing to do with 6mm bullets. It was a ghost town. If you were desperate for a .243 diameter projectile back then, your only real option was the 6mm Lee Navy. And that was chambered in that quirky Lee straight pull bolt action. They made a handful of sporting rifles for it, but by 1935, that cartridge was effectively dead and buried. Now across the pond in Europe, totally different ballgame. The British gunmakers were experimenting with 6mm way ahead of the curve. In the 1920s, you had heavy hitters like Holland or Purdy rolling out exotic rounds. We are talking about the 240 flanged Nitro Express and the 246 Purdy. Between 1895 and the Roaring Twenties, Europe birthed at least half a dozen 6mm cartridges. But here in the States, radio silence. That is exactly why 1955 was such a pivotal moment in firearms history. Seemingly overnight, both Winchester and Remington decided to wake up and drop new 6mm cartridges on the American public. It was an immediate showdown. The 243 Winchester versus the 244 Remington. Winchester played it smart. They took the brand new 308 Winchester case and just necked it down. Simple, efficient. Remington took a different path. They based their design on the classic 7x57 Mauser case, which, as many of you know, is the same parent case that gave us the legendary 257 Roberts. On paper, the Remington actually had the edge. It had a slightly longer body and a bit more boiler room for powder capacity, which meant higher potential velocities. The 243 was a shorter, squat little round designed to fit into short-action receivers. Even though in 1955, the concept of a true short-action sporting rifle was still in its infancy. Number 2. The marketing war. If you were a gambling man in the mid-50s looking strictly at the ballistics data, the 244 Remington looked like the heavy favorite. It was faster and had more case capacity. What is not to love? But Winchester had an ace up their sleeve. And it wasn't velocity. It was versatility. Winchester chambered the 243 in their flagship Model 70, but they also put it in the Model 88 lever action, and the Savage 99 picked it up almost immediately. They flooded the zone. Remington, on the other hand, made a catastrophic error. They completely misunderstood the American shooter. They marketed the 244 exclusively as a long-range varmint cartridge. They sold it with 75 and 90-grain bullets. And here is the nail in the coffin. They rifled the barrels with a slow 1 in 12-inch twist rate. For light, speedy varmint grenades, that twist is fine. But a 1 in 12 twist absolutely will not stabilize the long, heavy bullets you need for deer hunting. They crippled their own cartridge right out of the gate. Winchester saw the writing on the wall. They pitched the 243 as a dual-purpose hybrid, a gun you could use on coyotes on Saturday and whitetail on Sunday. They loaded it with 80-grain pills for speed and 100-grain soft points for meat. Most importantly, Winchester used a faster 1 in 10 twist rate to stabilize those heavier projectiles. The market spoke immediately. The .243 Winchester was a runaway freight train of success. The .244 Remington withered on the vine. By 1963, Remington practically waved the white flag. They rebranded the cartridge as the 6mm Remington. They tightened the twist to 1 in 9 and finally offered a 100-grain load. But it was too little too late. The war was over. If we are sitting at the reloading bench, splitting hairs, sure, the 6mm Remington is technically a superior design, especially if you are running a long action. But in the gun industry, perception is reality. The .243 Winchester took the crown, and it has held onto it with a death grip for 70 years. It is the undisputed king of the 6mm world. From the Texas brush country to the stalkers in the Scottish Highlands, this round is everywhere. Others have tried to take a shot at the title. The .240 Weatherby Magnum, the short-lived .243 WSSM Winchester Super Short Magnum. They all failed to gain traction. Nothing can touch the ubiquity of the .243. Number 3. Ballistics and Application. Let's look at the numbers that built this dynasty. Your bread-and-butter factory loads are usually an 80-grain bullet moving at 3350 feet per second, or a 100-grain bullet cruising at 2960. But modern ammo technology has blown the doors wide open. You can find screamers as light as 55 grains, and heavy hitters up to 105 grains. It covers the entire spectrum from prairie dogs to pronghorn antelope. Here is the general rule of engagement. Anything under 90 grains is for varmints. These bullets are designed for rapid explosive fragmentation. Anything 90 grains or heavier is built for controlled expansion and deep penetration on big game. And across the board, the accuracy is inherently superb. For the varmint hunters out there, those lightweight rounds are devastating. Take the Winchester 55-grain ballistic silvertip. The box says 3910 feet per second. I have seen guys with 26-inch barrels chronograph that load at over 4,000 feet per second. That is a red mist machine. However, a lot of the serious long-range predator hunters prefer the 80-grain loads. They just buck the wind significantly better than the .22 caliber centerfires. But let's be real. The .243 earned its stripes as a deer cartridge. It is accurate. It is gentle on the shoulder. It is not intimidating. That is why it is the default first rifle for millions of American hunters, myself included. It is the tool you hand to a new shooter to build their confidence without punishing them. But that brings us back to the elephant in the room. Is the .243 Winchester actually the best tool for the job today? Or is it a handicap that we are just too nostalgic to admit? Number 4. The hidden cost. For all its virtues, and there are plenty, the .243 Winchester has a dark side. It is the stuff you only learn after the check has cleared. On deer-sized game inside typical hunting ranges, say 200 yards, it is lethal. It gets the job done. But the moment you start stretching that distance, or you go up against a heavy-bodied buck, the equation changes. Rapidly. The .243 sheds energy fast at extended ranges. If you place a perfect double lung shot, you are fine, but your margin for error evaporates. It becomes razor thin. Compared to a 7mm 08 or a 308, you have far less forgiveness if that shot angle is bad or if the wind pushes you back a few inches. The second issue is one that mostly the competition guys and high-volume shooters talk about. The .243 is a notorious barrel burner. You are forcing a massive volume of superheated gas through a tiny 6mm bore. It is what we call an overbore cartridge. That creates intense heat and pressure that acts like a sandblaster on the throat of your barrel. If you are shooting matches or sitting on a prairie dog town all weekend, you are going to see accuracy degrade fast. I have seen barrels lose their edge in as little as 1,500 rounds. That is a shockingly short lifespan for a precision rifle. Now, for the guy who shoots a box of ammo a year to check his zero, that barrel will outlast him. But if you are a shooter who actually trains, it is a real logistical and financial limitation you have to factor in. When you combine those two factors, the limited terminal energy at distance and the aggressive throat erosion, you start to see the cracks in the armor. So here is the bottom line. The strength of the .243 Winchester is not that it is perfect, because it isn't. Its strength comes from the shooter knowing exactly what it can do, and more importantly, what it cannot do. If you keep it within its comfort zone, it is one of the most capable and pleasant cartridges ever designed. But if you try to push it beyond those boundaries, whether that is taking a shot at 500 yards on an elk or trying to run a high-volume barrel heater, you are going to have a bad time, and the consequences can be heartbreaking. Knowing where that line is drawn, that is the difference between a freezer full of venison and a long walk back to the truck with nothing but a story about the one that got away. I hope you guys got some value out of that breakdown. If you did, go ahead and crush that like button. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next upload. And drop a comment down below. Tell me your war stories with the 243. Good or bad, I want to hear them. Train hard, stay safe, and we will see you in the next one.